Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 24 of the Chosen One Star Wars podcast here on Game Domain. As always, I'm your host, Jason, joined by my co host, Captain.
Who is extremely happy about today's topic.
We'll get right into today's topic. It's pretty light in the Star Wars news category at the moment. No new announcements or no new rumors about anything. So, what we're going to touch on is just kind of a broad topic that is going to be, it's going to be more and more popular to discuss and be more and more into the, mainstream Star Wars media and fan base coming over the next year when Kathleen Kennedy's contract is up at the end of, I don't know if it's at the end of 2020, sometime in 2021. Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy's contract is up, and so she will either have to renew, or Disney could kick her out, or she could just decline the
She's gone.
contract offer.
She's gone. She's
Um,
gone.
that's really going to be it'll be a quicker episode, but that's really going to be the main topic of discussion that we're going to be talking about today. So first off, let's just address the fact that, we don't really have any inside scoops, obviously, of what, if she's going to take the contract or not. Her last contract renewal was, back in 2018. That was coming off of The Last Jedi. A lot of people thought that maybe she would just be done then, but she signed on for 3 more years. And, here we are 1 year away from her contract, that contract extension ending. And, there will be a big decision on Disney's part and a big decision maybe on her own personal part as to whether or not she wants to continue her legacy as Lucasfilm president. That's a legacy that has obviously come into question by the fan base, a legacy that some believe is good, and a legacy that some believe is bad, and a decent amount of people believe it's horrible and the worst thing ever.
And then, of course,
So
there's me who thinks that she is the living embodiment of Hiroshima.
so Kathleen Kennedy, I mean, she's in her 60s. She's getting up there in age. A lot of people question whether she even wants to extend, her work at Lucasfilm, or maybe she wants to, kind of retire and go off into the sunset as, one of the, objectively one of the best producers that Hollywood has seen. Um, and so, her Lucasfilm president, you can put that into question of whether she was a good president of Lucasfilm or not, and her decisions and creative mind. But a lot of people like her work as a producer. Obviously, she was very involved with George Lucas on the Indiana Jones movies, which are very critically acclaimed and beloved by their own unique fan base. So why don't we just get right into it? First let's start off with our predictions as to what we think is going to happen, and then after we give our predictions, we'll get into what we believe should happen, and how we're going to judge Kathleen Kennedy's overall legacy at Lucasfilm. So, Catherine, why don't you just start with telling us about not what you want to happen, not what you hope is going to happen, but what you think will actually happen.
What I think will actually happen. How do I describe 3 Hindenburgs piling into the side of Hitler's face during the middle of an atomic explosion that also results in the sinking of the Titanic and both Jack and Rose dying? How could I possibly describe that? Let's just ignore the fact that Kathleen Kennedy tried an underhanded tactic to make sure that she's still got a job, right?
Mhm.
None of that. Let's just get rid of that for a second. She has done way too much damage for people to be like, oh, Kathleen, keep your job. Do you want a raise? Do you want my children? Do you want any of this stuff? There's not a hope in hell that she can do that. I'm so happy about this topic because if she doesn't immediately get punted 3,000 miles into the sun, Disney's going to suffer a big backlash. But what I think, which is what you want to know, what I think will happen
Mhm.
is she will leave. She'll be gone. She'll be kicked out.
So, do you
But
think that?
she'll be kicked out hush hush. She won't be kicked out
Yeah,
officially.
officially.
She'll be hush hush kicked out.
So, do
And
you
a really
think?
good way of like putting that as a visual representation in the Ant-Man movie when Hank Pym resigns. Howard Stark says, "We don't accept
Yeah.
your resignation officially." So that's probably the best way to put it. She's
Mhm.
going to resign in air quotes, and
Yeah.
Disney are officially not going to accept that resignation, but they're going to give her a jetpack and fire her off into the sun.
Or she's just going, they just won't give her another contract. She won't sign the next contract because resigning would be her kind of just announcing right now in the middle of her contract. But at the end of her contract and the terms, obviously she'll have to agree to a new term and new contract to continue as president of Lucasfilm. So you're basically saying that you think that she will just not sign that contract, or Lucasfilm will not give her a contract. Correct?
She she has she has no, like, you know how she's just recently put out that she's sorry, she hasn't put out, but some information was leaked that Kathleen Kennedy is doing a female-oriented Star Wars thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was her underhanded tactic to make sure that she still has a job.
Yeah.
Because what it was like the actual president of Disney got out ahead of this. Got out ahead of Kathleen Kennedy before all this, and took the blame for what she'd done to the Star Wars franchise. With I'm guessing with the intent to be like, right, I've like taken your power from you. So he's done, like, he's defeated her. And then she's just turned around, and apparently the president of Disney has also had a clone of himself, and it's a dyad in the Force, and she started sucking the essence out of him again by underhandedly leaking this information, allegedly. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But this information got leaked that she's showboating and showrunning this all-female Star Wars thing. That is her lifeline to try and stay on it, because now the president of Disney can't be like, firing Kathleen Kennedy, because all the SJW people will be like, oh, you can't do that because she's doing a female-oriented thing. And then, Kathleen Kennedy's just cackling in the corner under the shade of her hood going, as she zaps more life out of Disney. I'm so angry at her, but this is such a good topic because I hate Kathleen Kennedy.
All right, so I kind of have a little bit of a different take on what I think is what can happen. I think that within Disney, and within within Lucasfilm, I think there's a lot more of a common consensus that is pro Kathleen Kennedy than we as a fan base think. Obviously, the fan base is very split. I mean, I don't necessarily know if there's really anybody who's running around saying they love Kathleen Kennedy. It's really the people who absolutely hate her, and then the people who are just saying, come on, whatever. She's just the president of Lucasfilm. You didn't like the sequel movies, but whatever.
Yeah,
they weren't
I
that
think-
big. Like people just defend her just to defend her, but nobody is outwardly saying Kathleen Kennedy's she's amazing. I want her to sign on. So there's
it's
really
kind of like that guy in baseball who can't hit, can't pitch, but people are like, oh, he's trying.
Yeah.
Those are the people on Kathleen Kennedy's side. The fans who hate this guy who can't pitch.
Yeah.
That's everybody else. And then there's like one or two people who are like, mate, you're doing a good job. You're really good at this. Those are the people that like Kathleen Kennedy.
Yeah.
She has more people defending her, but not liking her.
Yeah, nobody really
And nobody really likes her.
Yeah.
Well, can you blame us? She has no real chops. Okay, she was a secretary, then she became a producer back during George Lucas's heyday, and then just magically she was this figurehead in Disney. So that's like me, who has no welding experience whatsoever, welding a battleship together
and shipping it off to the Navy, and then using it.
And expecting it to be the best battleship in existence. That's like if in World War II.
Wait, so the best battleship in existence. So did the Martez sisters? Did the Martez sisters help make?
Yeah, it's piloted by the Martez sisters. But no,
they're the main crew.
If I was a welder in World War II and I welded the Iowa battleship together and then expected it to go out and like help defeat, and it just sank,
expected the Martez sisters to come in to pilot the ship.
It's the best battleship in history. It can't sink.
The USS Starlight Angel.
Yeah, so then I come out and say, don't worry, I'll make a new battleship that's an entirely female-led battleship. God damn it. Oh yeah, no, that's the one the Martez sisters can drive.
Yeah, entirely. Okay, so
I love coming up with analogies.
So I kind of I feel like that nobody really loves her, and I mean in defense of that is also that like there's no real reason to ever like love the president of a movie company. I mean obviously I mean there's no real reason for anybody to love them anyway. Obviously there's a reason for people to hate them when they ruin their childhood as Kathleen Kennedy is.
Yeah, obviously.
But there's really nobody who could like outwardly like love some producer who's in this position of president of Lucasfilm. So obviously George Lucas an exception, but obviously so that's one thing that can go against that argument. But I feel like that in Disney, I don't really think that they realize the impact that she's kind of had on the fan base and whatnot. I think that like within Disney itself and with the Disney executives and the boards, the people who would choose whether or not her contract should be renewed, I don't think that they necessarily understand the impact of how much people don't like her and what she's done to to Star Wars as a whole. So I think that they don't really understand that. They don't like grasp that aspect of it. And they probably just know her as, okay, yeah, here's the lady. She's a great producer. George Lucas, because I mean, a lot of people forget in Kathleen Kennedy's defense, George Lucas handpicked Kathleen Kennedy to be the president of Lucasfilm when he sold it to Disney. He told Disney, "This is who I want the president to be." So that was his decision as to who he want the president of Lucasfilm to be, and that was back in 2012, and by the time Kathleen Kennedy's contract's up next year, that'll be 9 years as president of Lucasfilm, and maybe more. The defense of her being the president is that George Lucas did handpick her. So you have these Disney executives who are thinking, who like they thought back in 2018, because remember back in 2018 when her contract was up and it was to be renewed, fans were saying the same thing that we're saying now, that she needs to go because that was coming off of The Last Jedi. People were saying this is a disaster, and obviously the defense for having her sign on for 3 more years was to just let her finish out the sequel trilogy, which I guess did make sense because, I mean, Episode 9 was already in production at that time when her contract was being renewed. There's really no reason to kick her out and have a whole new president of Lucasfilm in the middle of production of a movie, because that could probably kind of mess with things, having a brand new boss kind of right in the middle of
Yeah.
the production of a big movie like Star Wars. So, that did kind of make sense, I guess, to renew her contract just to take her through the end of the sequel trilogy. And so I really think that the Disney executives are kind of on Kathleen Kennedy's side, and not so much that they necessarily love her and think she's doing a great job. They're just thinking from the standpoint of, all right, George Lucas, handpicked her to be the president of Lucasfilm. She's making us a lot of money because obviously it's Star Wars. I mean, they made back the money that they bought Lucasfilm for, probably just from the Force Awakens box office
Yeah.
and merchandise alone, because the box office was, I think, 2.7-ish billion dollars or something like that. Somewhere upwards of $2 million. I think closer to $3 million than $2 million.
Roughly,
Billion. 2 billion. And so, and then obviously, through merchandise and whatever, I'm sure they made, well over, maybe even that price or maybe even more through merchandise. And they definitely covered the cost that it, cost them to purchase Lucasfilm from George Lucas. But so, I mean,
because it made 2.66 billion US dollars.
And just think about all the merchandise and how much that made worldwide and whatnot. I'm sure that definitely took them over $4 billion just from The Last Jedi. I mean, just from The Force Awakens.
It was budgeted. The budget for it was only 306 million, and it made 2.66 billion.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
That's definitely a very big net profit. So the Disney executives look at it like, she's helming Star Wars, she's made money. We don't necessarily care what the fan base thinks. They just might be completely out of touch. They have no idea what the fans think of the movies. They just know that she made these big 3 Star Wars movies. She's making the Star Wars on Disney Plus, which, whether you like Kathleen Kennedy or not, we all know that Star Wars on Disney Plus has been a really big success because everybody loved The Mandalorian. It was super, super popular, even with non-Star Wars fans. People who just bought Disney Plus and were like, oh, this show looks good. And a lot of non-Star Wars fans, millions and millions of them, bought Disney Plus and watched The Mandalorian. So that made them a boatload of money. She approved The Mandalorian. She, approved the directing, with Jon Favreau writing it, and Dave Filoni and Deborah Chow and that whole directing team to come on and do that show. She approved that. She gave them the green light for that. And, also, fans, the one thing that she's done that's kind of catering towards the fans is that everybody's known for years how much the fans want Ewan McGregor back as Obi-Wan Kenobi. And you could say arguably from her beginnings at Lucasfilm when she first became the president, only a few years later, like when The Force Awakens came out, that's when Ewan McGregor said that's when the negotiations started to make a sequel. I mean, to make a not a sequel, a spin-off film starring him as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that would be the Kenobi a Star Wars story, which was presumed to come out probably would have been this year maybe. After the next anthology film after Solo. Which would have been this year, the year after The Rise of Skywalker, if, The Last Jedi and Solo would have done, as well as they predicted they would, and as well as The Force Awakens and Rogue One did. But obviously, they abandoned those anthology films and kind of pushing a Star Wars movie out each year, and are now going down the Disney Plus route. So she was able to kind of navigate through that mess and still give the fans what they wanted with the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. And like I just said, that was something that they were planning back in 2015 before everybody, wanted Kathleen Kennedy, up on the guillotine. So that was something that she did from the beginning. That's really one of the only main defenses I have of her, that she wanted to do that. And obviously, bringing the Clone Wars back, I'm sure that had a lot more to do with Dave Filoni than it did with Kathleen Kennedy, because I'm sure when Disney announced and told their higher ups that they were making this Disney Plus service, I'm sure Dave Filoni probably went up to Kathleen Kennedy and said, "I need to finish the Clone Wars.
Yeah,
My story's not done." I highly doubt that. She's the one who went to Dave Filoni about that. I'm sure he was probably, asking her and asking Disney, to be able to make that. So I think that, yeah, I mean, that's really what her resume is up to this point. And as a Disney executive, they're probably looking at it and saying, she's done very well on the movie side of things, on the box office wise, because they don't care how the fans feel. They just, Solo was the only one that was kind of, yeah, Solo was the only one that was, kind of a downer. Every other movie made a massive net profit, billions of dollars from each of the sequel trilogies, for each of the sequel trilogy movies, all three of them, and from Rogue One, I think it made over $1 billion as well. So I mean, they view that as such a success, and they see what she's done on Disney Plus, and that there's going to be more and more Disney Plus Star Wars shows that are going to make them a lot more money, and them a lot more, them a lot more subscribers. So how I think, my prediction of what they're going to do is, I think that the Disney executives are going to offer her another contract to sign on. Now, where I think the question is whether or not she takes it. Like we said before, she's in her 60s. She's kind of done everything that you could really wish to do in Hollywood, I guess. She has a boatload of money. She was the president of Lucasfilm, the top person, the top lady at Star Wars, the company that owns Star Wars, which is such a big, one of the biggest media, entities in the history of the world. I think it's top 5 up there with like Pokemon, Hello Kitty, or whatever. Star Wars is right up there. I think it's number 4. And I mean, so she was in charge of that. She was the leader of that. I mean, I don't know what else you could really ask for in the Hollywood scheme of things. And obviously, she's such a, she's a tremendous producer. And being on the Indiana Jones movies, I know she's working on Indiana Jones 5, which also comes out. It's supposed to come out next year. I don't know if that's being delayed, due to the current pandemic situation, but it's supposed to be coming out next year. And I know that she also wanted to be with Lucasfilm when that movie came out, because Indiana Jones kind of is her baby. She cares for that a lot more than she does for Star Wars, because she was working on the set of Indiana Jones, back when the original 3 Indiana Jones movies came out, and she was very close to George Lucas in the production of those movies. So that's also another factor in whether or not she signs on. If that movie gets delayed, maybe she'll sign on for another year. But I think that it's really going to be down to her decision, because I think that Disney will offer her another contract extension, whether it's 2 years, whether it's 3 years. I'd like to think that maybe it would be 2 years, and take it to the start of the next trilogy set, which is supposed to come out in 2023, 2025, and 2027. Because it probably wouldn't be a good idea to give her like a 3-year contract and have her leave in the middle of that trilogy. So they could just give her a 2-year contract. She'd be done at the end. She'd be done in 2023. Hand it off to a new president who would come in and have to work on this new this new trilogy of movies that we'll be getting in the middle of this upcoming decade. So. I mean, that's what I think it's going to come down to, whether or not she wants to take the contract. I definitely think that something will be offered to her. And I mean, she has the way of looking at it, saying, yeah, of course I want to come back. And then she has the other way of looking at it. She's like, I've really done anything. I have enough money. Why do I have to stress myself out and have people hate me? I'm just not going to take it, and I'll go retire and, live my life. So I think that that's what my prediction of what the decision is going to come down to. Obviously, we really have no idea of what actually will happen until, we get rumors or leaks and whatever comes over the next year. But all right, so now this is going to be the fun one. I know it's especially going to be pretty fun for you. So now, we discussed what we think is going to happen. Now, why don't you talk a little bit about what you want to happen? This is going to be very interesting.
What I want to happen is for George Lucas to finally unlock his hidden potential, like go from that weird, bloated old man with that massive jowl that he's got, just stare himself right in the mirror and chant, Jar Jar was false. Jar Jar was false. And then as he does this, all that fat all those jowls disappear, and he becomes this 30-year-old Captain America-sized George Lucas again, back in his prime, and he kicks down the door when Kathleen Kennedy's in this meeting, and he laserizes her, vaporizing her on the spot. Then he summons the Hammer of Thor, because Disney own Marvel now, and he runs, and as he's summoning it, he jumps out of the 100th window on the 100th floor and grabs the hammer, and he flies and he flies and he flies and he flies so fast around the world that he Supermans it, even though Disney don't own that, and he rotates the Earth backwards all the way back to when he was still, in charge of Star Wars, and then he vaporizes her again. She's gone, removed from time, all that kind of stuff. He just makes the Star Wars the way they should be, and the way he wanted them to be. He gets rid of all this stupid "the Force is female" shit, because the Force isn't even a fucking living entity, mate. It binds us, penetrates us, holds the universe together. It doesn't go, does this dress match my shoes? Or, should I go pump some more iron at the gym? Stereotypes of both man and woman right there. And then at the end of it, George Lucas comes down to my house and he's like, "Thank you very much for saving the universe." I'm like, "No, thank you, George. Thank you." And then he does the whole like he does the whole the credits start rolling, and there we go, done.
All right, so I mean, obviously, that was a fantasy of what you want to happen to Kathleen
That
Kennedy.
was a fantasy.
So now let's move into realistically what you actually want to happen with Kathleen Kennedy as the president of Lucasfilm.
Realistically, what I want to happen is I want
is her murder.
It's a murder. Yeah, someone hire the Winter Soldier to snipe her or something like
Oh my
that.
god.
But Disney on Marvel, not stuff. Yeah, no. What I really want to happen is I want the president of Disney, the current president of Disney, or the president of Disney at the time, because I think
Bob Iger is the one right now, I think. Oh no, Bob Iger just
no, he's just retired, I think.
Yeah, he just retired. I don't remember the name of the guy who's current.
So all right. So the new president then should probably still be as president unless something massive happens. Jeff Vale's the guy. What I want him to do is I want him to invite Kathleen Kennedy in for contract renewal, and then just gallantly fall upon his sword and say, "Do you know what? We're not going to offer you a contract." Pull out a big list of everything that she's done wrong, and there is a big list. And I understand there's also some things that people would say she's done right, but I want him to go, "You've done this, 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 this." Any regular person would be fired by now, fired and buried and blacklisted. And I'm just going to publicly admit that we're firing you, and you're going to get your retirement package. See you in a bit. You're not coming back. You're not doing anything. I don't care what people say. I don't care if people stand outside of Disney headquarters with pitchforks and torches like it's Frankenstein saying, "Bring her back. She was amazing." Because we know you're not. We know that all you did was you just gathered a bunch of people in the political aspect that were on your side at that point in time in history, and you just pushed your agenda and pushed your agenda and pushed your agenda. And you got people out there in the social universe to keep backing you and backing you and backing you. That's what leeches like you do. So you're fired. You're not coming back. We're going to blacklist you. Go retire. Go spend some time with your kids if you've got kids. I don't know if Kathleen Kennedy's got kids or a husband or anything like that. But go do that. Go paint a mural. Just retire. We don't want you. People don't want you. The fans hate you. You've got like 1% of people backing you and keeping you covered. And I know people who are listening to this podcast are probably just going to start hating all over me. Fine, I can take the heat. And then I want him to go out and, like, in the middle of a press conference, say, "Yeah, no, we're not offering her a contract. She's fired. And if there's enough backlash from this, I will step down as president." And then he can go and retire and just realize that he has brought balance to the universe again. That's what I want. And I got, like, you can't see my face during this, but I'm really angry at Kathleen Kennedy. I understand she's done some good things. Okay, she got some balls rolling that was good, but if I was to, like, cure cancer, but in the meantime create mass genocide of several million people, then it don't really weigh itself out, does it? And that's kind of what she's done. She got the ball rolling on some good things. We're getting Ewan McGregor back and all that kind of good stuff. With the Mandalorians coming back, we're getting more Clone Wars stuff in the form of more animated with the Bad Batch. We got Clone Wars season 7. We got the good stuff back. We got good Disney back. We got good Star Wars. But then she also alienated like the entirety of the Star Wars like fan base that had existed since the first 4, 5, and 6, or if you're a kid, 1, 2, and 3. And then at the same time, she just started throwing all her agendas at stuff like that. So when you make TVs and stuff, I can understand, like, you want to say, "Oh, strong female woman, yeah, cool, that's fine." We've had them before. Ripley in Aliens, fucking Lois Lane, for crying out loud. She had no superpowers, but she still ran into danger. We've had them before. I can't remember that other one in Aliens, the Latino woman. I can't remember her name, who like dies, but like is really cool. We've had them before. So all you did was you just caused this massive firestorm on social media, screwed everything up, and then we're just like, oh, see you in a bit. And so what I want her gone. I understand I'm going on a tirade right now. But yeah, no, I want the president there's Disney at that point to just like stick to some guns, read the room, and be like, "We're not giving you a contract. We should have fired you 3 movies ago."
So I definitely don't want to see her return as president of Lucasfilm. What I can't quite figure out yet is necessarily who I want to replace her. There's this other I can't remember her name, but there's been a bunch of Star Wars YouTubers who have been talking about it, over the past like
Oh yeah,
year or
I do
so.
follow a few.
Yeah, there's I know Star Wars Only has talked about it a fair amount. There is this other young lady, I think she's only in her 30s, who Kathleen Kennedy has kind of been, moving up and up the ladder along with her over her tenure at Lucasfilm.
Oh yeah.
And she, I believe, has been appointed to like vice president of some sort of directive under Lucasfilm, a very, very high position. And a lot of people are thinking that she's probably going to be, the next pick to head Lucasfilm. I'd like to think that if Kathleen Kennedy, because like I said before, my prediction is that I think that Disney will offer her a contract, and I think maybe she'll just decline and just retire.
Yeah.
If she declines, I'm sure that she kind of has the leverage to kind of not handpick, but suggest like, oh, I think you should look at so and so to be my successor.
Well, I
If
guess
they don't
anyone
offer
can
her a
do that, can't
contract and they technically like fire her and just say you're gone, then they have all the leverage to choose because they're like, oh,
they?
we
Oh
don't
yeah.
care about who you pick. But it's kind of like George Lucas, where George Lucas says, I want Kathleen Kennedy to be the president of Lucasfilm. They pick Kathleen Kennedy. And then if Kathleen Kennedy declines the contract, she kind of, she's kind of leaving on, the higher end, she has the upper hand and she could, kind of has the leverage to recommend somebody that she thinks would be good to, fulfill her seat and be the successor to her job as president of Lucasfilm. So I can't remember she's a young woman. She's in her 30s. I can't
I
remember her
remember
name.
who you're talking about, but
Yeah.
her name escapes me.
Yeah, and so she, I think, right now is probably the front runner to succeed. A lot now.
Oh,
Another
fuck
thing is
it.
that a lot of people say John Favreau or Dave Filoni. A lot of people say Dave Filoni because of his
No,
close connection. Yeah, because I
we
don't
can't take
want.
them away.
Yeah, we can't take them away from the creative side of things because if they're the president of Lucasfilm, they're going to be like managing everything. And I don't
Exactly.
necessarily know if Dave Filoni has any credentials to be the president of Lucasfilm. He's a creative mind. He's a director and he's just like he's a brilliant
Yeah.
genius when it comes to Star Wars. Him being the president and having to manage like business side of things and not be working on the creative side of things would
Well,
definitely hurt. With John Favreau, I think it's a little different. I think he'd be better suited to be the president of Lucasfilm because he's not really like a good Star Wars mind. He doesn't really know the lore. He doesn't know the story. He
he's
can
a
just
good
kind of
filmmaker.
yeah. He's a very good filmmaker. He's a very good writer and story creator. And so I think that he is also better off suited writing things. Obviously, he wrote The Mandalorian, but alongside Dave Filoni, because Dave Filoni had that Star Wars knowledge to, put in all those hidden Star Wars tidbits that, John Favreau doesn't know because he's not that, still, a Star Wars fan, but nothing like, Dave
Yeah, I think
Filoni is.
he's more of a
Um,
comic book guy.
yeah,
I think.
yeah, and he's more of a casual Star Wars fan. Dave Filoni is, as nerdy as a Star Wars nut
Yeah.
as we all are. So that's why it's amazing to have him in there because it's kind of like a Star Wars fanboy having, creating these TV shows and being such a creative mind. So I definitely like to see them just keep Dave Filoni in the creative aspect of things. I'd love to see him work on movies going forward, not directing and writing them, but just always kind of, if he could be the head creative mind, the head creative guy at Lucasfilm moving forward and kind of have his hand in every single Star Wars project that they're making and just have his creative influence because he was also trained under George Lucas. I mean, he worked on the Clone Wars with George Lucas because, a lot of people forget when, the Clone Wars TV show first debuted with the movie in 2008 and then lasted up until 2014, those first 6 seasons. For the first 4 years when Lucasfilm was owned by George Lucas before it was sold to Disney, George Lucas was, making all of
Yeah, he
those,
was
and he
there.
was working with, and Dave Filoni was kind of right under him, and Dave Filoni was directing them and
All right,
working
let's not put
directly
that
with
image
him.
in people's minds.
So, yeah, and so, um, that it's so that that's why Dave Filoni is so adept with the Star Wars knowledge and so into the Star Wars world, because of him learning everything from George Lucas for 4 years working on the show, and then continuing the show for 2 years on his own, as part of Lucasfilm when they bought when it was
Yeah.
bought by Disney. So I definitely would not want to see Dave Filoni end up being the president. I'd want to see him stick on the creative side of things. Jon Favreau, I would welcome the idea, but I definitely like it to be somebody who's more on the management side or business side, somebody more like a Kathleen Kennedy rather than a creative mind, because I don't want to see the creative minds taken away from being creative and being on set and doing all the things that they can do. That Kathleen Kennedy is not a writer. She's not a she's not a creative person who creates stories and directs. She's a
No, I
she's a
mean,
Hollywood producer, and now she's like a business management person, being the president of Lucasfilm. Obviously she's on set and she has an influence and she knows about Star Wars and knows about this stuff, but she's not necessarily writing the stories, she's not directing, she's not creating things. So that, I think, definitely, whoever the next president of Lucasfilm is, they have to make sure that they keep that fine line between the management side of things, like with Kathleen Kennedy is, and the business side of and the creative side of things
yeah.
with guys like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau.
See, what I think they should do to appoint the next person is let us have a teeny tiny. I understand it's business, right? Okay, you can't outsource business decisions. Okay, sometimes you just got to put your foot down and do what you got to do. But it would be nice to see us have like a 1% input into what
I
happens.
I
It
I
would be nice.
I definitely can't see that happening though whatsoever.
No, obviously not.
Yeah,
But I totally agree. They should not remove the people who are helping, create the Star Wars stuff. They should not remove them
yeah,
because that'd be terrible. It's like pulling away the pilot mid-flight. You don't want that to happen.
yeah,
Even though there is a co-pilot, I mean, it's like pulling both of them away and asking a stewardess to fly.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I
but
mean,
no, it's like
yeah,
it's it's a tough one.
yeah.
Okay,
It is a tough one.
it's a dynasty it's a dynasty that's existed for a while, and there's always going to be things going on, backlash, all that kind of stuff. I understand. I went on a rant earlier, and people are probably going to be angry at me with that. I don't care. Okay, it's the internet. Get used to it. But I do understand. Kathleen Kennedy has done some good stuff. Okay, she's managed to get the ball rolling on things. Like I said earlier, she's been in a position to help push things in the right direction, but
She's
she's
dropped the
done
ball
way
more
too
times than she's
she
pushed it
yeah,
forward.
she's done way too much damage that we just can't fix.
Yeah,
Not for a while. It would take a while to like sort stuff out, which is why like I think there's been a bit of speculation that Lucas is coming back himself to do a bit of fixing. I doubt that. I think he's
yeah.
happily retired with his millions, or billions. I don't know how much
Yeah,
he's
I
got.
don't. Yeah, I mean, definitely well over billions.
But it's I don't know. What I think what they need to do for a while is calm down. Disney need to focus on the Marvel aspect. Okay, like I've just gone on a massive Marvel binge watch. I think instead of throwing Star Wars, like TV show Star Wars, that's fine. Okay, instead of throwing Star Wars movies at us every year, it's perfectly fine to do it with Marvel because it's a much bigger expanded universe. So
Hmm.
I'm fine if they do that and
Yeah.
spend more time and effort into fixing the Star Wars. As they try and bring everybody back in, try and bring the old fans back, try and bring the new fans that left, but back and find this nice middle ground for us all. And yeah, like I said, Kathleen Kennedy probably doesn't have a leg to stand on. She tried an underhanded tactic by leaking that information allegedly, and like I'm going to say, allegedly to all this kind of stuff, so people can't just slap us with a bunch of stuff. But there is no one the only person who can say for real what is exactly going to happen is the person who can see the future, and they don't exist, so it's all up in the air at the minute. And man, I hope something good comes out of it. Like as a person who's been a fan before 1, 2, and 3 came out of Star Wars, as well as some of the other stuff like the Disney movies that were way more fun than they were now. Like live action ones that we get now, like the Beauty and the Beast one was terrible.
Yeah.
I think what it is people get too political in the jobs that they've got.
Yeah.
It's like you can't do it. I mean, I understand why, but when you're making movies, when you're making films, when you're making TV, all that kind
Yeah,
of
you
stuff,
have to be making, the
yeah,
thing. You can't be
you have to
throwing
be on the
agendas.
outside. You can't be like, oh, we should like that's why Captain Marvel flopped. Okay,
Yeah.
you can't have your agenda
Just
in it.
yeah, just have a like, and you
have a
know we've
movie.
seen that with Kathleen Kennedy, like saying, you know, advertising something as a female-led thing. Nobody cares that
Yeah.
Rey was a girl. It's the fact that you give her things because she's a girl, having these
Exactly.
extra things, and portraying it as, oh look, it's this strong female lead. It
And,
can't just be a
and
strong
then that
character
shirt,
who's
of
in the
course, is female. That
yeah.
pissed everyone off.
Yeah, that definitely that wasn't a good look for her.
No, that wasn't a good look for anyone.
Yeah. All right. So I mean, that kind of wraps up all my thoughts on the issue, Captain. I mean, I know you kind of went on a few little sprees of what you thought.
I understand.
Yeah.
And what I'd like to say to the audience listening is, before you start like hate commenting or agree commenting, like no, seriously, before you do any of that, sit back. Go look at don't just take our word for it, okay? This is what you should do in real life as well. Don't just take our word for it. Go look at the news, go look at all the information you can gather, and then if you want to come back and comment on the video, do it as an informed person, as informed as you possibly can.
I'm sure they've already commented. Nobody waits till the end of the video to comment, you know.
But I mean, if you have managed to make it this far, understand, everybody has their own biases, okay?
Yes,
as much as I try to be neutral as possible, there are things that will irk me, and like you know,
Kathleen Kennedy is one of them.
Kathleen Kennedy's one of them. But obviously with my co-host as well, you know, he has his own stuff, you know, so it's like he agrees on something, he disagrees on others. Find this nice balance, and then before you start hate commenting and stuff, like, go read the room, go look at the information, come back and have conversations with us. Don't just don't yell at us. Well, don't yell at me specifically. Leave him alone. If you want to yell at me, go ahead and yell at me, because I can take it.
All right, yeah, so that kind of wraps things up. Hopefully there'll be some Star Wars news that comes out in the coming week that we can discuss with you guys next episode. And so we'll see you guys next week for the 25th episode of the podcast.
Yes.